Salvete omnes! Hello, friends, Romans, and countrymen. It is Livia back with another video, this time discussing the Aeneid written by Vergil, specifically lines 238 through 249. So to give some context for these 11 lines, essentially Venus is asking her father, Jupiter, why Aeneas, her son, must go through so much struggle when Antenor, a very similarly situated Trojan, did not have to go through this much to found a city. So let's dive in. Hoc equidocasum Troiae tritisque ruina solabar, fatis contraria fata rependens. So, Hoc in this case is with this promise, as it is referring to the earlier promise that Jupiter made to Venus, in which he said that Aeneas and his men would all be great leaders. So they omit promiso, but essentially hoc serves as an ablative of means, in which it's saying, by means of this promise. And then we go to solabar, which is at the end of the sentence, but it is still the verb that should be used here. I was consoling myself. So solabar can be a little bit tricky because it's a deponent, meaning that it is passive in form but active in meaning. So it comes from solor, and it is first person singular, imperfect, active, indicative. So I was consoling myself is how I translated it because I felt like that made the most sense. For the downfall and sad ruins of Troy. So in total, that would be, with this promise, I was consoling myself for the downfall and the sad ruins of Troy. Now, fatis contraria fata rependens. So that's going to be with fates balancing opposite fates, which of course refers to how the present fates of Aeneas's men and Aeneas himself are far, in a way, better than his fates had been in the past. He was in a shipwreck, but now things are tentatively looking up. So Venus, who is depicted right here in this statue, thinks that the fates are looking up for Aeneas and his men. And maybe, just maybe, the struggles that Aeneas has been going through are perhaps at a bit of an end, or at least a resting point. Nunc iadem fortuna viros tot cassibus actos insequitur. So, but now the same fortune, iadem fortuna, follows in sequitur yet again, a verb very much at the end of the sentence, but absolutely what we should be using here. The men driven by so many misfortunes. So nunc here is interesting because even though it could be translated as now, I thought that but now would be probably more likely. It definitely flows better with the translation. If one were to translate as but now rather than just now, it would be effectively a syndeton, which is, of course, the rhetorical device in which you omit a conjunction. Because, but now, but is a conjunction added to now, and yet here we don't see, at nunc, just nunc. So in total, but now the same fortune follows the men driven by so many misfortunes. So that there is an ablative, I would like to say it is an ablative of means because they are driven by the misfortunes. The misfortunes are driving them. That is the means by which they are driven, by misfortunes. So then we go into quem das finem rex magnae laborum. So here we see an ablative, a vocative with rex magnae, as Venus is calling upon the great king, of course, her father, Jupiter. And what she is saying is, I think here we should start with the quem. What end, of course, end being finem, do you give, das, great king, as we had stated earlier, for their labors? So essentially, Aeneas and his men have labored, they have worked, they have toiled they've, struggled really, really hard to found a city, which, I would think would eventually be a good thing. And yet they are experiencing so much struggle. So Venus here is asking her father what end are these, means accomplishing? What, when will their struggles end, essentially? Antenor potuit medis alapsus acivis a lyricos penetrare sinus. So essentially, this is Antenor, and then I went to a lapsus, having escaped from the midst or from the middle of the Greeks, Achives, of course, referring to the Greeks, was able, and then penetrare, we get a nice infinitive, to enter the Illyrian Gulfs. So in this case, Venus is referring to a Trojan who was indeed able to found a city without nearly as much hardship. Antenor escaped the Greeks and then was able to found Padua, or Patavium as we will soon see it, again, without as much struggle, or nearly as much struggle, as Aeneas has been through thus far. And Aeneas hasn't even made the city yet. So there could be so much more down the line. So Venus refers to Antenor as an example of someone who has not faced nearly as much struggle as Aeneas, but has attained the goal that Aeneas wishes to reach. So she's essentially saying, what gives, Dad? Why can't my son have it the same way that Antenor has it? So now we make it to at quintima tutus regna liber noret fontam superare timavi. So, and to safely pass beyond into the innermost kingdoms of the Libernarians and the spring of the Timaeus River. So here she is again referring to Antenor's path. Antenor was able to make it safely into the innermost realms of the kingdoms of the Libernarians, and to the spring of the Timaeus River. So again, Antenor's kind of cruising, whereas Aeneas is getting his shipwrecked. He's getting, his friends are dying. There's so much struggle that Aeneas is going through that Antenor just seems to have sort of skipped out on, yet still reached his goal. So interesting thing about the Timaeus, it is a river of Venetia that it flows into the Adriatic Sea. Here's a nice little picture of it. It looks like a lovely place to be. And that is where Antenor was able to go through the springs of the Timaeus. Unde per ora novem vasto cum murmure montis it mare proruptet pelago premit arva sonanti. So this I have translated as, from where through the 9 mouths with a great murmuring from the mountain, a sea of water comes bursting forth and essentially covers the fields with the roaring sea. So essentially there is flooding, but this is indeed the place at which Antenor settles his town. And another really interesting facet of this specific section is the alliteration that is used with cum murmure montis it mare. Alliteration is, of course, the rhetorical device where one utilizes words with a similar beginning or a similar, sound in the beginning to emphasize a certain point. So here we have cum murmure montis it mare, which describes the setting, the murmuring mountain, and then the sea, which sort of overtakes the fields after the mountain murmurs. So it describes the landscape in a really powerful and effective way. Hic tam men ille urbem pativi sedesque locavit tu crorum. So here, however, he located the city of Pitium, or as we know it today, Padua, and settled, and the Trojan settlements. So it was here, in this place that has, the flooding of the sea and the murmuring mountains, at which Antenor was able to settle Trojan settlements and essentially found the city of Ptolemy. So, he didn't really have that much to go through, and he founded a city. Good for Antenor, but unfortunately Aeneas does not get the same benefits. So we get to et genti nomen dedit, and gave his name to the people. Armaque fixit Troia, and fixed the Trojan arms. He essentially, he gave arms to these Trojans who are now, living in Padua, or Ptolemy as it was at the time, making sure they could defend themselves. Nunc placida compostus pace quiescit. And now composed, he rests in calm or quiet peace. So Antenor is able to rest in peace, which that sounds very morbid. He's able to rest peacefully, I should say, having done his work, having founded his city, which unfortunately Aeneas is just not able to do yet because he has not founded his city yet, which, though quite unfortunate, no spoilers, but it will happen. So that's going to be it for today. I hope you guys learned something about the Aeneid and about specifically lines 238 through 249. Thank you so much. Valete omnes. Have a good night.